you know by now, it does not matter.
We're talking about chapter 4, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. A little saucy. And because Katja was also unavailable to join us last week, and she asked me about that, and Kevin was graceful enough. And so, for both her benefit and Mary's, even though Mary didn't know it, she's made a list of topics and questions. So, Mary, did you want to start with your follow up from last week's?
Oh, it wasn't from last week. It was just I don't think you guys talked about this last week. Just as we meet all these characters, I just wanted to know kind of if you had to choose as readers, who do you identify with most? Like who do you like and who do you identify with most? I thought Kevin might like to hear this.
Yeah,
Kevin
everybody goes
knows.
silent.
Oh, I was just giving everybody else time, but Kevin knows my answer. Ethel is my soulmate.
Yeah, she's in chapter 7, not 4 through 6.
But that will give you something to look forward to.
Oh, I've read her. Yeah, I like her too.
But for those of us who are following instructions and reading at the right speed, so Mary, you asked the question. You get to go first.
Well, I mean, I am drawn to Sally. I really like Sally's story, but I'm afraid I identify with Livingston. It's just that the structure and the need for stuff and the whole, just the constant theme of feeling like everything's unraveling. I think reading this in this year has like all the little false bits of things that I use to control my world. I am totally with Livingston right now. Like, can't freaking have pork chops on Thursday. What the hell? So yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because you missed this from, I don't know if I said it last week or I said it in the first meeting, Mary, but I've not read these sections for almost a year now, that at least in a linear fashion. I've read bits and pieces, but not, cover to cover. So I'm going back and rereading it along with everybody else. And this time, last night, I picked it up and started reading Livingston. And I thought, man, this is this is much more timely than it was. I'm the same way. At first, I thought, oh, the guy's crazy, but now it's like, yeah, this is 2020 here. Everything's kind of blown apart. I hadn't thought about it till then. Yeah,
Kevin, I think you half answered that question. So, do you want to go last with your identifying character?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I need to do that.
Yeah. Anybody else want to jump in?
I'm just going to tag Anne. And basketball, Anne.
Okay,
and basketball.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of drawn to Sally too, but I'm thinking about Livingston, like, who could live that way? Oh, no way. Like, what in the world is wrong with you people?
Have we gotten to the light switch? Come to my house. You're welcome to see all of it.
Yes. All the switches up, go down.
Well, yeah. To ask Mom. Mom will be home by then.
And
so, Anne, who do you identify with then?
Sally? Probably Sally. And I've read ahead some too, so I don't want to get too far.
Other Anne.
Oh, okay. Sally, I know everyone's kind of said him already, but he's the first character we're really introduced to. So he just, I don't know, I like him. The Livingston is a little bit crazy though.
I'm sorry, are we popcorning or am I jumping in?
We can popcorn.
I'll go ahead and jump in, I'm sorry. As far as one that I think I identify with, I don't know why I'm leaning towards Colton or C-Note or I don't know. I don't know that we've had like a whole lot from his perspective, but just like his interactions with James, I'm kind of like, that sounds like me in high school in some ways. Like it feels familiar. Not in every sense, but in some senses. So that, I don't know, I think that would be mine. I don't know that he's my favorite that I like to read about, but anyway. Chris, why don't you go next? Uh-huh.
I would have to say, probably, and this summer in particular, I relate with Kat.
Yeah.
Someone always wants something. There's always a plan. There's always and you just can't. Things just aren't coming together the way she wants it. Bless her heart.
Barbara, you want to go next?
Yeah, may as well. I agree with Mary about Livingston. That was my first response. I'm not as set in a pattern exactly, but I will say, Amy, that if Chuck has switched the light on the staircase the wrong way, I'll go back and at night before I go to bed, I'll go back and fix it.
Yeah, the way it should be done.
But
These things matter.
But Kat, I can identify with Kat because I feel like that she's, and I'm guilty of this, taking shortcuts or getting somebody else to do her work for her and that kind of thing. I do try to, and I think it's because I don't maybe trust myself as much as probably I should. And I think that somebody else might be able to figure it out better than I can or whatever. But, identify with Kat too.
Okay, I'll go next. I'm not sure who I would identify with, but from the first 3 chapters, I felt like I was really sympathizing with James, because what else can go wrong, And I felt like, you know what, in all this mess, good for you, for your positive attitude, not giving up, and actually looking for something else to work out. And we know that he's not looking for good ways to work out, but he's not like giving up and doing absolutely nothing. I felt like that attitude really is something that takes people in life. Maybe you have to go through some bumps, but eventually, hopefully, he will get to some better place in his life. But in these last 3 chapters, I think I should get few ideas from Trudy and plan the meals. That would make my life so much easier. I was like, really? Do people live like this? This is what I need to do for my family, and this is it. So I definitely have to take some ideas from her.
Peggy, did you want to go next? Great.
Sure. I think I identify with Kat for a couple of reasons. One is her argument with her, I don't know, is he the department chair?
Yeah.
I'm always, all my life growing up through my jobs, the person above me never got it. It was like, I always felt like I was trying to get something that they just saw no point in, and that was frustrating that they missed it. But also, when I go to a restaurant, I order what I want. I don't care what you serve. And I love that she walked into the fish house and ordered what she wanted. And she's probably the one I like the best so far, the one I identify the most with.
Laura, I know you had to pop in a bit late, but Mary started us off with that question: who was our favorite, or with whom did we identify the most? So if you want to join in.
Sure. Gosh. Who I think the character I like the most is James, and then ironically, I think the person I identify with the most is Brittany. But I mean, she's definitely probably the character that is more my age, but like, maybe does some, like, is into things because she feels like, I don't know. I like the little bit that I got from her about her in the end of the 6th chapter. I was like, I know who you are. Yeah. Like, just somebody who might be interested in somebody like James who's stupid, even though they're smart, just because they're goofy, but then also has like their own thing going for him, because obviously she doesn't actually care that much about James from what I last heard. So anyway, that would probably be my 2 cents there.
Super. Renee, I know you had to step out. Did you want to answer this question? I love the look she's giving me through the computer.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass because
Okay.
I'm a little farther, just a little farther.
Uh-huh.
Look,
Okay.
the whole thing. So it wouldn't be fair.
All right, Kevin, are you going to answer or are you going to pass?
No, well, I mean, I'll
didn't go.
I'll weigh in.
I
don't know if-
apologize. I'm
Who didn't
sorry.
go?
You go, Karen Elizabeth.
Oh yeah, Karen Elizabeth. Yes, absolutely.
And I lost
Just
track
trying
of
to
the Brady
hide.
bunch.
Yes, everybody moves around. I think Colton, he talks about being the enigma. He kind of gets stuck being the voice of reason, looking out for the crazy people around him. And he said something about when he was talking about Captain Enigma coming to all those marginalized by society. That's me.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry. I'll try to keep track of my moving Brady Bunch screen.
Yeah, so me. I'll weigh in. I don't know if this is really an answer because it for me it's changed. It changes all the time. Sort of every time I come back to this, it changes as far as who I identify with, which character I identify with the most. In a big way, Sally, just because the questions, and you'll see this sort of as it goes on, a lot of the questions he's trying to answer are questions that I ponder. So there's a lot of identity that I share with him, but I really like James. And when I first started drafting this, I did not like James at all. I didn't like him at all. But the more I wrote him, the more I liked him. And there's that that idea, and you guys will see it again coming up in the next couple of chapters. Well, the next several chapters with James is he's, I think Katerina mentioned it, and this is what I like about James is he doesn't really think a lot, but he does, and he just kind of jumps in and goes. And because of that, I identify with him, but I also identify with Kat. So I'm sort of like a conglomeration of those two. Because with Kat, that whole idea, especially with me, I'm not a career academic. I came to it later in life, and I'll run into friends from high school or acquaintances from high school or people I knew back then who haven't kept up. And they're like, well, what are you doing now? And I'm like, well, I work at the university, I teach writing. And this look comes over their face that they just don't know how to respond. So that look, and with Kat, I share that sort of thing because, from time to time, there's that thought that creeps in. I have no business being here, and I don't really know what I'm doing, and I'm just kind of winging it, which I think Kat and James share. So, but my favorite character is you guys haven't met yet, and I'll hold off, and it's very, very minor. The character only appears twice, but it's my favorite character in the whole thing, actually. So, yeah, a non-answer. There you go.
No tension, right? That's
building
suspense. That's more
Tell
suspense.
us when we get to it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You'll know.
You'll know.
You'll know.
Okay.
You'll totally go, this is who he's talking about.
Yeah, you'll know.
Mary, what all is on that little piece of paper? 'Cause it's really chock full of stuff. So we're just going to hand you
I know.
reins and you just go, girl.
Well, I mean, I think part of why I like Livingston is he's got this whole mantra worked out about honest, stable, dependable, loyal. And he's organized his life with rituals to kind of keep those in place. And so that appeals to me. But Kevin, that whole chapter, the whole unraveling chapter is just such a really nice, just kind of a nice little piece, because you've got this kind of ironic thing where this poor, meek, unraveling guy can't tell his wife that he's lost his job at the orangutan condom company. his severance pay is a condom, and his wife turns everything on its ear, almost literally, and gets pregnant. So he's not even using his severance the way he should.
Yeah.
And so it's just this encapsulated whole scene that I think is really kind of a standalone, even like short story within it. And I reread that a couple times because I just really liked how well defined in a short space Trudy and Livingston were, their situation. It was flash fiction. It was a little flash fiction piece.
Yeah. Thanks. That section is, it's one of my favorite pieces in the book, for a couple of different reasons. And you touched on them. Trudy, I didn't mention Trudy when we were talking about characters, but I really, really like Trudy. And the main reason I like her is because for whatever reason, and the last 30 years, the bane of my existence and the love of my life have been encapsulated in the same person. I'm drawn to these very strong women that just, it's like, this is what I'm going to do. And I liken it a strong, independent female. I mean, I do, there's not a misogynistic bone in my body and never has been. So I'm a big fan of Trudy, just because she's like, she's driving that train all the way, and Livingston's just doing the best he can to hang on and figure it out. And he's a little bit of afraid of her, but he really loves her. So I can identify with that. But I'll give you guys, did I talk about the New Yorker and all this piece before? Did I tell you guys that?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Good. This piece has come up in a couple of other things I've done, so I can't remember who I told the story to and who's not heard it yet. The whole Livingston, this section came from an actual short story that I had several years ago. And David Payne, he's a North Carolina writer down east and everything else. David read it and really loved the piece, and he gave me a recommendation and a name. He says, "This is a great story." And the first place I sent the story was the New Yorker, because he said, send it to them, they'll like it. So I did, and it was 21 pages long. And I remember this very specifically because it came back. They're like, we love the first 20 pages of this story. The first 20 pages are excellent. If you can fix the ending, we'd be interested in publishing the piece. Well, I couldn't fix the ending. I never did. There's probably 25 or 30 different variations of the ending, and I never got it right. And the story was different. The way it occurred originally, the intent was the same, but I had Livingston, this character of Livingston I had in my mind. But what happened was he walked out to get the paper in the morning. He still took the print newspaper. He walked out to get the paper, and for some reason, he could never explain it. He kept wondering, that was the whole thing, was he kept wondering why he did it. Instead of getting fired, he went across the street and stole his neighbor's newspaper. And when he brought it in, he realized that the two newspapers were different. And what had happened, I mean, the theme behind it was, but they had just by mistake delivered like the Metro edition, and he got, a local edition or something like that. But that's what started everything to unravel, because he's like, oh, if they're printing two different, versions of a newspaper, what else is out of line? So the whole thing kind of unfolded. So yeah, it was, it was actually a short story was how it started. And then I finally just shelved it. I just abandoned the thing and figured it's never going to get published because I couldn't figure out how to end it. And I knew the ending wasn't right. So I just left it. And I kind of got to the point, and I'm like, I need another character in here. And then stumped, not really knowing exactly what to do and playing around with a couple of different things. And I said, oh, wait. The short story that I could never end, the easiest way to fix a short story that you can't end that everybody likes is to make it a novel. So here it is. And that's what happened. So yeah, it's and it's their story's very common, I think, in a lot of ways. They seem weird, but I think, I've been married a long time, and I think people that have a lot of years in can sort of identify with that, everything about that relationship, one way or the other.
Okay, Barbara's got a hand up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say that I did. You mentioned that you had read that at the Boone Lit Festival.
Yeah.
So I did find that and enjoyed hearing you read it. I really appreciate that. That was good. And I think it
Thanks.
will make a great short story. I really do. So don't give up.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's a weird thing, just all the way around it. And James, I identify a lot with James because it at the same time I'm kind of like James, and it's like, how did I get here? I don't know. I just barrel full steam ahead and let's see what happens. I mean, my life motto is the old saying, take a chance, Columbus did. Just let's see what happens. But there's that part of me that wants, there are certain areas that I really, really, really need to control, and if I can't control those things, that's why I don't like flying. And I know that I detest getting on an airplane. But I think if I was the pilot, I'd be fine. It wouldn't bother me at all. There are certain things I like to be in control. And for those of you on social media, I posted pictures of my garden the other day, and that'll show you. I mean, the rows have to be straight. I don't like any weeds. I'm just real particular. It's got to be a certain way. And the light switches do have to be down because, the electrical currents mess up with everything that's going on. So.
And those sound like perfectly logical explanations to me.
Yeah.
See, and I see people shaking their heads. There's a little bit of live in everybody. Oh, look, Ann. Basketball Ann is like, no.
Yeah. Still coming back to characters, though, and I meant to mention this earlier because Laura mentioned Brittany, and you'll see this with her. I mean, she's a minor character, but this is not too much of a giveaway. I mean, because you guys can sort of look for this sort of thing coming up. No, it's not too much of a giveaway. Amy mentioned Ethel. And if you, in my mind, Brittany, Kat, and Ethel are slightly different versions of the same person at different points in their life. To me, so, and you'll see that.
I can live with that.
I definitely get that because I could see me turning into Kat as I age.
Yeah.
And it's just, totally, because there's so much of like my younger self that's in Brittany because she is younger. Yeah, so that's funny that you say that.
I love Karen Elizabeth's approach to that. Like, I can't be worried about the light switches. I appreciate that too. I don't know. I like the concept of finding order in the small things, and then the large things should follow suit.
Right.
See, that's it. It's like I can control which way this light switch goes. I mean, the getting people to wear a mask and stopping this virus, I can't do a thing about, but I can make sure that light switch down every night.
Oh,
and I think I'm trying to like James, because Colton does.
Yeah.
Like they're characters I hang on to because other characters like them. So if Colton sees something redeeming in him, I'm looking for something redeeming in him.
Yeah.
But you don't really write despicable characters either. I mean, even Arlen's just a really sad, disappointed, thinks he's got this love match, totally misguided guy.
Yeah. I love that concept of redemption, Mary, because when I wrote a piece for North Carolina Library Journal about this, and I made sure that we put that in there because I was like, Kevin, proofread this to make sure you feel good about it, because that's an important element, I think, as you read all the way to the end. But I'm super interested to know what else is on that piece of paper. At some point, we may have to do a screen share because I'm like, Mary.
Yeah, talk about Livingston. It's like, I'm going to book club.
I'm going to book club.
Look, I feel really guilty that I missed last week.
Well, you missed.
And I'm just hoping I can find the book.
Well, Kevin, any of the lit majors, have you ever read The Tenets of Moonbloom?
Mm-mm.
Okay, I'll have to find that for you. Gazillions of characters. and their lives all intersect.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking through this the other day when I was rereading these 3 chapters, like you do a murder board.
Yeah.
Like who's connected in what way, and just what do other people think about this plot of land? I mean, we've got this plot of land that is the convergence of possibility for every single character.
This is one of my favorite literary devices. It gives me like a little like shining light inside whenever they like meet up and they don't know and I know them, and I like, oh my goodness, it is literally my favorite thing to happen in a storyline. And so that was something I was gonna bring up too, is that I just love how you do that, and it's so much fun for me to read.
Thank you. Have you read ahead, or are you? Okay.
I stop myself. I try to be like Lacey and put it away for the week after.
Yeah.
My 3 chapters.
Well, yeah. Well, there's a lot more of that. As it goes on, there's a lot more. It took me probably 6, 7, maybe even 8 chapters, even through the revision process. It took me about that long to feel comfortable that I could do it. And then after I'd gone through a couple of revisions, then it turned into a little bit of a game. Let me see how many of these I can drop in and how many different ways I can do it. So, yeah, that was a fun thing, because I'm the same way. I really like books that do that. And so, yeah, thanks.
Do you think that out physically when you're writing it? I mean, I think Amy probably would with the theater background, that you think about the entrances and exits and who's hitting their mark.
Not at all, which that's a really interesting question. And I've done several of these in several different things, and nobody's asked that yet. Absolutely not. I didn't. I sort of wrote this in a linear fashion, and then I sort of didn't. I don't write with an outline. I never knew where the story was going. The whole piece of land idea didn't come up until really, really late in the drafting process, because I was just writing stuff and I didn't know where it was going. I didn't know the hook. And so the pieces or the pathways and where they crossed, I sort of knew in general, because I knew each character's design on the piece of land. So in a big, broad way, I knew where they would cross to that end. But then it's what I was just mentioning with Talara about the way it sort of fits after that. After I got everything finished, I said, this is a story. Then I went back and I could revise to put in, as the more I go into it, the further you get into it, the more confident I became with how I could do that. So it was, I didn't know it until after I'd finished it, and then I could see where I could do it. So yeah, and sometimes it happened and I didn't even know it. It was just, I'm writing a character. I'm like, I'm just writing background description. And then in revision, it dawned on me, if I just, instead of this random thing, I could insert this in and then go revise a paragraph in the next section and it'll work. So it was pretty random, which is evidence of how scattered my brain is.
And that's what people like me and some others have to worry about after he's done, right? But that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's a mess. Like the I guess we'll call it a work in process, the new novel, whatever it is. I'm at like 135,000 words, and I have no idea what it's about. I had no idea what it's about. I feel pretty comfortable that it's going to be another 80,000 word novel, but I don't know what novel that is yet. So yeah, it's kind of a weird thing.
All right, Mary, what's your next question?
Okay, I know you guys are laughing at me, but seriously, folks,
no,
it's so nice to read for pleasure.
Yeah, and Nancy had another meeting, but was just able to join us, so welcome, Nancy.
Can we ask Nancy the first question? Hey, Nancy, Who do you most identify with in the book? Or like most, whichever you want to do.
I don't know. That's really hard. Like I told you all the first meeting that I sort of loved this Grandma Ethel character, but I don't want to be her. But you know, I still sort of liked her. Of course, I'm the professor. You know, there was something about, I don't remember her name. Y'all remember my daughter has the book. I read it when it first came out. The young girl.
Brittany.
Yeah, Brittany.
And Brittany, right, that wants to be on Survivor. And then, like, really, I like James. I know I'm not supposed to like James, the bad boy, but, you know, there's just, I've dated bad boys, so, you know, it's a long time ago.
There's
Hey, I like
bad
them.
boy.
I sort of like the bad boys, so. I'm not probably not allowed to say that. If that's a violation of anything, I'm really sorry. But you asked the question.
No,
and
you're not alone in liking
answers
James.
first, right? Grandma, professor, nice girl, and bad boy. Yeah.
There were what, at least 3 people that like James?
Yeah, he's really popular.
Okay. Yeah, I like James.
Yeah.
Like, I liked him, but.
Your answer sounded a lot like mine, Nancy. I'm kind of, and I wrote it, and I still can't decide. I'm all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
I guess my question about this plot of land, as we think about it as kind of a focal point for all the characters and their different stories, is thinking about the dangers and the possibilities within that space. You know, like for some people, it holds out great hope. Pardon me?
I said Liv seems to be very aware of the dangers.
Right. Right.
Yeah. I'm trying to find in one section. I think the thing, is it in? Yeah, it's the Arlen section. The thing about the land with me is I think this is chapter 4.
Oh, Dad.
Yeah, so they didn't put the chapter title, so I'm not really sure, but I think it's chapter 4. That idea where the paragraph development had begun creeping toward the house in the past few years, but hadn't taken over yet. Which made following her there difficult. All are worried about being spotted. That whole paragraph really kind of grabs what I hope to do was it grabbed the idea of the land and made it bigger in a way that any area that goes through that, you know, where it moves from, as most things I guess do, you know, it's rural and then suburb and to me urban. Because my version where I live now, my version is it's an urban environment almost to the point of not. I know it's not downtown Charlotte, but in my mind, from memory, you know. That idea, so the land becomes this sort of character, it becomes this sort of thing that has all these different attributes just like a character does. So that's where, you know, that's where the thing kind of revolves around, turns around for me.
Yeah, you know, it's so in keeping with the characters that you've got Sally, who's got this big plan for the future on the horizon, and he's seeing this from the airplane, down to Liv, who is stuck in the poison ivy and the nettles, and James, who lives in the moment and is just in the space to try to find a place to grow his weed.
Yeah.
And Kat, who wants this plant for her future, you know, it just, I really liked how that all came together and how the very different visual perspectives corresponded to the personalities of the characters.
Yeah, thanks. That's a good point. And it's really, I mean, that's really accurate as far as what I was hoping to get. So I really appreciate that, of that idea that the question of the land, and this is especially true and now, I mean, I've been thinking about this a lot over the last couple of weeks, just given the environment and given the things that are going on. And I'm really thinking about, well, how does this book sit in the midst of all this? I mean, they're removing Confederate monuments and everything else, and I'm talking about this traditional Southern thing of attachment to the land, and that's all sort of wrapped up into the same complex notions. But that's exactly the point, and or what I hope to get across is this idea. There are some things, and if you haven't read ahead, you may or may not have read the acknowledgments, but I go on a little bit of a rant in the acknowledgments talking about this view from the outside of the South and the Southerner and all that sort of thing. And there are pieces of Southernism that we do need to hang on to, and there are pieces that we don't. I mean, I don't have, I mean, I'll just go ahead and go on record. I see no need to keep these statues of Confederate veterans. I mean, we lost, is to say. I mean, that's it. We lost. Losers don't get to put up monuments in my mind, in the way I look at it. Plus, I'm also that these things are, if you really want to know your heritage, you can learn these things. I know all this stuff. I don't need a monument to know this. But this connection to land goes beyond that. And it's very complex. And everybody has a different, sort of, like you said, a different need or a different view of how to use the land. And that complexity, I think, what I hoped at least, was to sort of capture that whole Southern attachment to the land ideal, or trope, if you will, that notion that the landed gentry, noblesse oblige, whatever you want to call it, is a very, very complicated idea, and it's multi-layered. That you have to, and different people come at that and come from that in a lot of different ways. That's a lot of words about basically nothing, really. I mean, it's just dirt,
This may not be relevant, but I've been thinking about dirt too. Some of you who know me know that when I get really upset or angry, I do what I call dirt therapy. It involves a mattock. And I'm not Southern, but I've been thinking in this era of COVID, again, nothing to do with the novel, how fortunate I am to be on land. Because if I were I have a niece and her boyfriend that live in Brighton, England, in a 400, they don't even call it square feet, but it's a very small apartment in a very urban area. And I'm thinking about uptown Charlotte, South End, Nodal, where it's just so dense that to be able to get out in the era of COVID is just, it feels risky. Or and for me, I can get out and pound dirt, I can pick blueberries, which I did today, and grow gardens. And that land, there is something about land, even in an era of COVID, that is a responsibility, but also like a gift right now. I feel like it's a gift. I think it's therapeutic for me. And it has nothing to do with Southernness. I think it has to do with space.
Yeah, exactly. And I agree with that. I agree with that in a huge way. And it doesn't really, I hope that it doesn't reside just in Southernness. It's that idea of being grounded, I guess. I don't want to, I don't want to go too namaste and all that sort of stuff, but that really is what it comes down to. Like we started watching recently. I discovered we had this channel. This throwback to last week, limited TV channels around here. But the show, I think, is called Yellowstone. And Kevin Costner's in it. And he made a comment, I think, in the last week's episode where he's standing out. And I don't know, we just jumped in the middle, I think it's season 3. But he's standing out in what I'm assuming is Wyoming, and he's looking out at the mountains and everything else, and it's just space, just space. And and I don't even remember the question, but he kind of looks around and pauses, and you could tell that he's looking at the land. And he says, "It doesn't matter what the question is. This is the answer." And that's, you know, that's really kind of what I'm going for, is that idea that that there's some sort of attachment that we have, and we being capital W, you know, humans, that's inescapable, you know, in some sort of way.
And, you know, I think the way Nancy phrased that is really important. She said, I'm not a Southerner, but, right, because it is everybody. And Mary put a really nice comment in the group chat about that, because Kevin and I both grew up with family members who said it just like this: always buy land. They ain't gonna make no more.
Yeah.
Right. And that's how you built a portfolio, right?
Yep.
That's what you made a difference by. And I don't know if that's a Southern thing or not, but that's always a phrase that we both heard. And, you know, I don't know about everybody else, but that's still the way most of my family thinks, you know. But that's just so interesting.
Yeah, it's an odd thing, you know. And in Southern Lit, it's for some reason in Southern Lit, it's branded, or it's become one of those tropes, and everybody sort of goes back to it and you know, keeps revisiting the idea. And I agree, Nancy. It really, I don't know why that has been historically in Southern literature, why that's been a thing. Because that's not just a Southern trait. I mean, you look at the Midwest, especially, you know, the small farmer is gone. So that land means a lot to the people out there, you know. And it always has. It's not Southern. You know, you look at, in one way or another, most of the wars that have been fought forever have something to do with land, you know. So it's a weird thing. I don't know.
All right, Mary, what's next on the list? I love this. It's just me keeping Mary on track. That's awesome.
I think actually we've covered most of it. I mean, a lot of it was about Livingston, and yeah, and the scheming and everything else, and who needs what out of, you know, what the hostilities are around this. One of them's grandma, you know, and, you know, it's not just physical stuff. It's, so we've gotten to most of that. I don't know what to think about Finn Strickland.
I like Finn.
Based on some people's faces, Kevin, you might want to do just a little summary. That might be helpful.
Have we gotten to Finn yet?
Yeah, Finn's growing pot in the hotel.
Yeah, he's the guy next door that's got the indoor grow operation. Finn,
yeah, I think people sometimes connect with the thing they do as opposed to the name they have. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we just met him at the end of chapter 7.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. That's when they break. They come falling into the room. He's the guy right next door to when James settles into the hotel. Yeah. Finn actually had a much bigger role in the draft, and I argued to keep him in there for quite a while. Most of the things that Finn tried to represent are still in the book, but there was probably, I don't know, Amy, how much? Probably 20 pages of just Finn from his perspective that got cut out.
Oh, am I muted? No, I'm good. And I have a real connection to Finn. Not that I know anybody who grows pot in a hotel room, or if I do, I'm not aware. That sounded weird. And we're recording. Awesome. But Finn is the way we get to the short story that Kevin talked about last week. Bye, Peggy. So glad to see you. That we talked about last week, that has the extended story where my dog appears. And so I really fought for that too. But I would say it's more than 20 pages that got cut.
Probably.
And it's one of those nice other circular pieces that fits in into just a a really bizarre but lovely way. But I still expect there's going to be it's more than flash fiction. Yeah, it's definitely a full bodied
Yeah.
short story that you'll see later. But the aspects that you do get to see about Finn are really important, and his representation, if not in actual pages, is still filtered throughout the story. That was lovely. Oh, we'll do that again.
Yeah, the idea of Finn, while he's completely and totally outside of the law, and I mean, in every regard, he's this character that it's almost one of those sort of honor among thieves sort of guys. But two is he gets everything that Sally is concerned about, and a lot of that was cut out, but he was really meant to be in the draft before he got cut. You see a lot of Finn's internal, where he is very nostalgic for the old way. Not necessarily in a bad way. He's nostalgic for the old way of growing and selling weed, and everything, even though he's embraced this hydroponic indoor growing system and all that other kind of stuff. He misses the old ways, and he misses, he goes back and forth to Wilmington as part of his distribution circle in the original draft. And he finds there's this little bar in Wilmington that is just a little hole in the wall dive bar, but it's very simple, and he misses that. And he understands that all of those things are disappearing, that there used to be those same sort of things and places and people around Charlotte Metro, and that they're gone. So Finn is, I like Finn, and for a lot of different reasons. He's outside the law, but he's really just a businessman. He's really not that much different than Sally is. He's just, it's a commodity, and he's trying to do the best he can. But I got to shut up because I'm about to give away more Finn stuff.
Careful.
I have a secondary question to the whose character do you most identify with, because it's different for me. Which story pairing group are you most drawn, like people who are reading, are you most drawn to?
Wait a minute, how do you mean that?
Do you mean
I mean,
convergence?
like I feel I'm Liv. That's fine. That's the one I most identify with, but I don't most identify with his storyline.
Oh, I got you.
I actually am most intrigued by whatever the hell James is going to try to do, because I'm still trying to figure him out. Maybe it's because I feel like I get Liv a little bit more.
Yeah.
But there seems more momentum at this point about how's he going to not screw this up.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen to Colton. And so I just wondered, other people who are reading, does that differ for you? Are you attracted to different people than you are stories?
That's funny because, I always want to know what's happening to Liv, because I don't identify with him. Like, what is this nut going to do now? Like, how can it be worse than being worried about those light switches or, the routine? But I keep wanting, like, when it's moved on to something else, I want to get back to that to figure out what's going to happen to him.
Well, I kept thinking, I read the book when it came out, so I'm having to reread, but I kept thinking, C-Note, you're a good friend, but this kid is going to screw up your college opportunity. And I just knew that he was going to, so the whole time you're thinking, what is going to happen?
I would say for me, now that we've opened the box and seen what's inside, thong and all, I'm interested in seeing what's going to go on with Sal, or Sally. I don't know why. Sorry, I still have a little bit of a mush brain today. I couldn't even come up with that. Anyway, now that we've opened up the box and seen what's inside, and there's that little photo and the notes on the back, I'm starting to make like, those connections for like, okay, now we're putting the whole puzzle pieces of like which characters fit where. It's starting to come together, but I'm interested in like, okay, what is Sal gonna do now? Because it seems almost like we're setting this up for like he's gonna be in a position of power, like gonna be making some decisions and stuff, and I'm like, this is gonna be interesting. I'm interested to see how that pans out. And of course, up until this point, I've just been thinking, what's in the box? But now we know.
Yeah.
And it was better than I thought.
Barbara.
I'll just agree with Jessica about the Sal story, because I guess that's kind of where we started, and I just want to see how that plays out, because I feel like everything else is going to have to fit into that. And I am really attracted to just mystery novels anyway, and so that presents as, I guess, more of a mystery to me.
Yeah. I like the Sal storyline.
And I will say, Kevin, go back. You mentioned Yellowstone a while ago. Go back and see the first 2 seasons too.
Okay. Yeah, I will have to binge those, because I do like it. We've seen it twice. And I'm like, all right, I gotta go back and watch them. It is pretty good. I'm not a big TV watcher, but this one's, I stumbled on it. So I'm like, yeah, I got to go back to see it.
And I'm sure you'll identify with this, Kevin, from a female perspective. Kevin Costner aged very well.
Yeah, that's what my wife tells me. So,
still very yummy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Sally's storyline in this is it really sort of drives everything, and for me, that was the most fun. Now I'll play writer for a minute. I think it may have been Ann. I think, Ann, you mentioned how, I want to get back to Liv. Well, the way I wrote it, I didn't write this in a linear fashion. I would write one particular section until the other character just kept banging on my shoulder saying, hey, get back to me. And then I'd just go back and write another section. So I wrote it all over the place, because that's exactly how it was when I would draft it. I would be writing one part and I'd say, I got to finish this. And another character would just get in my head and would not leave me alone. So I'm like, okay, I'll go write that one. So I appreciate that sentiment.
Anybody else have any questions that they were just really excited to cover today that we may not have addressed?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say that I posted in the Facebook group that I've been reading this aloud to some foster kittens, and I'm trying to get socialized to people. And the dialogue, like, it's just so much fun to read, like out loud, like to just vocalize the characters. Like, it's a lot of fun to do that. So I don't know, kudos. I'm enjoying it.
Thanks. I'm flipping through because I'm reading with you guys. I'm not reading ahead. I'm trying to see what 8, 9, and 10 have.
7, 8, 9. I said 7 earlier by accident. I don't.
7, 8, 9.
I don't know where my brain's at today. It just.
Okay, so we're 7, 8, and 9. Let me see.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Ethel.
I'm gonna say this, and y'all are gonna say what? It starts to get a little weird. 7, 8, 9. Yeah, it's
weirder than 6.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Did you say 6 or sex?
Oh,
both.
Both. Yeah. Yeah.
Either.
Come on, Amy, do this.
I know. This book club has taken a turn.
Amy, clutching the pearl.
Yeah, we yeah, it gets weird. I will say this. Let's see, we have 4, 5, and 6. You pick up 7, 8, 9. Okay. So with 8, I will, if as far as balancing characters, couple of folks have already mentioned Ethel. So Ethel comes in at 8, and once we get her in, all of the main players are on the stage. There are other characters that come in, but they're minor, just sort of plot, support characters to move the plot along that sort of pop up. A couple of fun ones kind of come in, and my favorite one comes in a little later on. We won't get them next time, but yeah, it starts getting a little strange. Like I said, by the time I hit this section, 4, 5, 6, right along in there, in the drafting and the revision, I started to have a little confidence that I could turn it into a novel. And that's a confidence in a writer is a bad thing, because I started, well, let me see if I can get away with this. Several of those things slipped past the editor. So yeah, the next section, chapter 8 for me is where the book really, chapter 8 is where it really takes off for me, just as the writer, as the author, I guess. So y'all have fun with it.
Well, that's exciting.
Might be too much build up. I don't know.
I don't think so.
You didn't undersell it last week, so.
All right. Yeah, it was funny. I think Barbara mentioned she saw the Get Lit thing, and that was done live. And the tape version that you saw, I screwed it up. It was an Instagram live thing, and it was the first time I'd ever done one. And when I finished, I didn't know how to save it. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. So we lost the initial one with all the comments and everything else. And then I had to go back and re-record it and post that on just a dry recording. Mm-hmm. But leading up to the actual live event, and when they introduced it and they had all that stuff in there in the original live one, they kept putting out these disclaimers. It's like, parents, put your kids to bed. This is an R-rated reading. And I'm like, it's not that bad, surely an 8 or a 9-year-old won't know what I'm talking about. And if they do, you have bigger problems at home than this,
PG-13.
Yeah, really. So yeah, so I got that out of the way early. But that section I will say that, just more background, throwing it out there. This whole thing, when I started putting it together, Amy was reading. Amy's one of my beta readers, and Claudine Garrett, who is in Chicago, is another one. And they read the roughest pieces. I've got other beta readers that read it after Amy and Claudine get it. So they read really, really rough stuff, bless them. But after I'd finished this section and had done Amy and Claudine's suggestions with revisions and everything else, I did a reading. It was an open mic, and I did a reading, and it was at a writer's conference, so there were only writers there, which is always the most terrifying time to read, because everybody's so cynical and so picky and so competitive. But I read that first section, the same thing I did for Get Lit, Get Lit Boone, the live scene that opens up chapter 4, and everybody laughed. And as soon as everybody laughed and they came up to me afterwards and were talking about that, at that point was when I knew I've got a novel. So this chapter 4 is really, even though it picks up at 8, chapter 4 is really, really, it's probably my favorite chapter overall, just because of that, because it was that point in time when I first started letting people outside of that close circle hear pieces of this. Chapter 4 was the one I took out, so it was to introduce it. So that was a very reassuring thing. And I know Ann and Mary have both been in my class, and I tell students about how terrifying it is, and it is that way. I mean, I'm friends with great internationally known writers, and we have the same conversations that I say in class, is that everything about writing is terrifying. There's nothing that's when I say I have confidence in something, that's immediately followed by terror and fear and, oh no, I shouldn't be confident about it. So yeah, chapter 4 was, I'm glad y'all enjoyed it. Chapter 4 was always a special thing for me in the process. So I'll shut up now. So you can tell I made it to the bottom of the wine glass. I'm just rambling on about nothing.
Okay, bottom of the wine glass, which took about an hour, so I guess we're good.
Yeah.
So same bat time, same bat channel next week. And Jessica, remind us chapters 7, 8, 9. Is that correct?
That is correct. 7, 8, and 9.
Super, super. And if anybody wants to beat Mary to the list when we log on,
It was
that's
a great list too, Mary. It was really that was good.
yeah. Beware when an English major comes bearing a list of questions.
I was trying to make up for my previous absence. Sorry, overcompensated.
You were missed, but we were glad for the list. That was lovely. So
yeah, absolutely.
Well, it's a fun group. I'm just glad to have the discussion from the reader's point of view, to see how other people felt. I liked that there was so much difference, and we got the Liv camp, and we got the James camp, and we got the that's just that's cool. So thank you, Amy and Jessica and Kevin. Thanks for making that possible.
Oh yeah, it's thank all of you guys. I mean, I say this every week. It's really those different perspectives. It's really neat for me, and I learn something every week. You guys will make little comments. I'm like, I hadn't thought about that. So
yeah, and I always love to hear a non-Southerner's view of a Southern piece. I find that fascinating. So that's interesting to me as a reader.
Yeah, I'll go full on Southern. I made a comment about this last week. I had another Yankee neighbor walk up in my yard while I was doing yard work this week, and for an hour and a half talked about the book. I know these people. They're just like my small town up in New York. So I'm like, yeah, okay. Again, we're all right. We're not.
Is it always while you're doing yard work?
Well, it's starting to have that pattern because well, I'm usually over at the big farm. Or my mom and dad's, so all the neighbors walk. We're one street. It's not, you don't have any choice. They walk, and we're down near the cul-de-sac, so the neighbors from up the street walk to the cul-de-sac, turn around and walk back. And the ones who have actually purchased the book, I've decided that they do this because I can be inside and I'll notice somebody in the window and they sort of slow down, and I think they're looking to see if they can catch me in the yard. They're not willing to walk up and ring the doorbell yet. But if he's out in the yard, we're going to go talk to him, So, so I've had a couple of those. And there's like 52 houses on our street, 3 Southern that I know of. There are only 3 Southern, traditionally Southern. Everybody else has moved in from elsewhere. So
transplant.
Yeah, it's always interesting to get the different opinions. So I've had upstate, or not, just outside of New York City was this neighbor, and northeast Ohio was the other neighbor that spent an hour and a half with me. So always interesting.
Well, what's our group makeup? Who are the Yankees?
Mary, Karen, Nancy, I think.
I'm a Midwesterner.
Yeah, that's right. Nancy's Midwestern.
Well, you know they lump us in there.
It's not the same. So
okay, well,
it's not the same.
Then we need to correct people, because then I'm a Midwesterner too.
Yes, I know, Mary.
Oh boy, yes, I put Mary in the wrong box. I'm so sorry.
Well, my husband's lived in North Carolina his entire life, except for the 3 years I took him to Wisconsin. So he's never lived anywhere but North Carolina.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mentioned Claudine as one of my beta readers. And Claudine is Midwestern through and through. She's born in Illinois and Southern Illinois, so and that's definitely Midwest, rural. She lives in Chicago now, but yeah, I think the Midwestern sentimentality and philosophy and everything else is probably the closest to that of the Southeast.
Could well be. And Katya is, I believe, from Germany. Ukraine. I'm really sorry, I had that wrong. Ukraine.
Yeah, so totally foreign, but it may be Ukrainians are very much value land, and I grew up on land, but Ukrainians not only own land, they work on land, and land, like in my family, was a huge thing. And if you look at the classic Ukrainian literature, the land pretty much goes one of the main characters, because it supports families. This is how marriages were formed, land was given and taken, so I was running from it all my life because I lived with my grandma who had land, and there was no other thing to do in free time than work and take care of land, but now I ended up in Union County on 2 acres of land, and I don't regret it.
Yeah. Katya, I've got a very good friend of mine, Alexander Boldazar, he's Ukrainian as well. He's got a book out, came out a couple of years ago called The Ugly. And it's surrealist fiction, but that whole idea, and he and I, we met at a conference and just became great friends, which was really odd because everybody said that the two of us had the most unusual accents of anybody at the conference, between the Ukrainian, and it was a Northeast conference, between the Ukrainian and the Southern guy. But yeah, he and I trade work back and forth, and his book centers on that whole idea of there's a lawyer, or well, he's not a lawyer, but he is the patriarch, I guess, of a certain area of land. This is the surrealist part. And they find out that somebody's trying to build a ski resort or something to do with butterflies. It's some weird thing where they're coming to see butterflies. So he walks all the way to America to go to school at Harvard, so he can learn how to battle the lawyers that are going to take the land away from him. So it's a really interesting thing. And it's odd that I didn't realize you were Ukrainian, but yeah, Alex and I talk about that all the time, the same connections.
Do you think there's something in the difference between just urban and rural? Because when Jim and I moved here like 26 years ago, within the first week I was here, 2 questions from complete strangers. So you found a church yet? And when are you going to start a family?
Yeah.
We didn't talk about that where I grew up. And Jim said, this isn't a north-south thing. This is an urban-rural thing, because he grew up outside of a town of 500 and he had the same thing.
Yeah. And that's one of the things, you missed this last week, Mary, but the neighbor from Northeast Ohio, that's what she said. She told all of her friends. She came back another time and she had a stack of books. Bless her heart. She had ordered like 10 books and she wanted me to sign them all. And she had a list of all of her friends back in Ohio. And that was it exactly. She said she said, we know these people. And that's what I told everybody else. She said, it's exactly the same, that it's the rural area, the small town kind of feel where everybody still knows one another. And then they had seen some of the same thing, not quite to the extent that we're seeing it down here, but that encroachment of the urban life onto the rural. So yeah, it's the same. And that is it. It's urban and rural, just the difference. I think. I don't know. Who knows?
All right, folks. We will pick back up with 7, 8, and 9. And you'll get to learn about one of my faves next week.
Yay! I'm looking forward to it.
And I feel like Jessica and Kevin needed to stay on for a hot second, so I'm going to stop the recording.
Yes, actually,